Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, we talk with Dr. Glynn Tonser, livestock market economist at Kansas State University. He is one of the many featured speakers at this year's Risk Profit Conference that took place on the campus of Kansas State University that we will bring you over the next several weeks. But we'll talk about what's going on in this cattle market and looking to the end of the year, even early into 2025. We'll also have updates from the Kansas Soybean Commission, Kansas Department of Agriculture, as well as Kansas Grain Sorghum on the weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
In agriculture information, U.S. Census data says American producers saw a moderate improvement in their internet access from 2017 to 2022. Across rural America, the percentage of farm operations or operator residences with internet access increased from 75.4% in 2017 to 78.7% in 2022. Now, much of the Southeast still lags behind the U.S. average, but they had pretty good increase in producer internet access. Still a surprising number of producers at 21.3% who do not have access to the internet. This is important for government agencies and universities to understand and make sure they get the information they provide, and it's available to all producers. Many available options for internet access simply are not adequate for addressing things like precision agriculture in rural America. A task force with the FCC recommends a minimum performance of 100 megabits per second for download, 20 megabits per second for uploading to support things like precision agriculture. The California Air Resources Board is proposing a cap to the amount of renewable diesel made from soybean or canola oil that would qualify for their state's low carbon fuel standard. Now, some of the proposed changes for the California LCFS would also require feedstocks like soybeans to be certified as meeting sustainability criteria. The California board also wants to continue an exemption from low carbon fuel standard requirements for jet fuel. Now, that may promote the increasing use of sustainable aviation fuel. But under the proposals, companies would be eligible for the LCFS credit for no more than 20% of the biomass-based diesel made from soybeans or canola oil. In the first quarter of this year, biofuel from soybeans and canola oil accounted for about 30% of the renewable diesel that qualified for those credits. Now, the American Soybean Association said this proposal would likely increase credit prices and boost fuel costs throughout California, a major market for oil. And Southwest Georgia farmer Alex Harrell has surpassed his own world record for soybean harvest, 206.79 bushels an acre that he set in 2023. Now he's back-to-back yield champ, and he grows the highest yielding soybeans in agriculture history. He cut a bin-busting 218 bushels per acre in that Georgia soybean production contest. He said he never thought this year's harvest would surpass last year's by such a wide margin. So after setting the record last year, he wanted to try again, but decided to change a few things up. He planted seed into the red clay watered by center pivot irrigation on the opposite end of the county from his previous year's success. Now, during this August harvest, he hit 218.2856 bushels an acre on a plot of 2.58 acres. The remainder of the field still well above that 100 bushel per acre mark. The record soybean has averaged almost 3.1 beans per pod. His 2023 average was 2.8 beans per pod. That's Ag News. We'll have more coming up on the Kansas Ag Reports.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com.
And joining us, Dr. Glynn Tonser, Livestock Economist, Kansas State University. We caught up with him at the Risk Profit Conference. Dr. Tonser, always good to see you.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks for the time.
Okay, so you've been out talking to a lot of different folks about where we are in this cattle market. And when I hear your comments, are you bullish or bearish?
Yes, like all good economists, right? But to timestamp this, we're sitting here in August.
Yes.
I was trying to clarify why the market's pulled back in recent weeks, and that part is a bearish tone, right? And part of my thesis was feedlot margins are being squeezed, and I think we're seeing that, push back on feeder cattle prices. Some of our expectations for calf prices are lower than they were 4 or 6 weeks ago. So that part is bearish, to your point.
Right.
But I'm certainly bullish over the next 2 or 3 years, primarily because demand's been better than we thought it'd be, beef demand that is, and the numbers in the system are going to decline, so that'll be supportive of prices.
Probably when I talk to producers, you probably do as well, everybody asks the question, when's expansion coming? Many people thought it was going to be this year. It looks like that has not happened.
Well, I'm confident in saying it hasn't happened yet. What I shared today, again, you and I are here in Manhattan, is I think a year from now, so, the summer of 25, if nothing changes, which of course lots of things will change, but if nothing changes, I think we'll be on the front end of expansion. It hasn't initiated yet. The January cattle inventory report, I don't expect us to see that it's occurred, but by the time we're, again, summer, fall of 25, I think we'll be in the process.
Okay. Now, the other thing that we have noticed as we talk about the feedlot focus and the numbers, especially in southwest Kansas, we are putting more on these animals. Even though numbers are down, we're still pushing a whole lot of product.
We are, and it's part of the efficiency story for the industry. So, this is a good story in many ways. But one of the numbers I shared was in the second quarter of 2024, we as a country actually produced more beef than we did the second quarter of 2023, despite the fact we had fewer animals. And the only way you do that was, to your point, there was a notable increase in the slaughter weights on those animals. I think that trend is going to stay up because cost of gain is lower than it was, and feed yards in particular want to kind of occupy the feed yard when there's fewer animals in the system, so they have an extra incentive for that. I don't think we'll have the same rate of increase because it's been quite drastic, but I don't look for us to go back to like historically low weights because there's a lot of incentives to put more beef on every animal.
Well, it looks like where we are, at least as we talk right now, you can lay some input costs relatively good, so you don't necessarily have that big number to make some money.
Feed input, yes, but not feeder cattle input.
That's true.
And that's a big part of the reason, and my bearish point is feeder cattle had gotten much more expensive, which again is good if you're a cow-calf producer selling that, but from the feedlot buyer perspective, there's been some pushback in recent weeks, mainly because the projected margins have gotten quite negative. So that's the way these different margins work.
Well, let's go back to that run. Did you really... We didn't talk before the run this year. Those prices were, we had some sale barns just on fire.
Yeah, but a lot of folks were bullish on, again, nothing's changed on the thesis, there's fewer calves. That hasn't changed. So the buying power and the interest in that, I wouldn't say that was too surprising.
Okay.
Some would say it got too far ahead, but that's how markets often work. I describe them as a pendulum. Usually we overdo something, both directions, and then it falls back where it's supposed to.
Dr. Glynn Tonser, K-State Livestock Economist, joins us. We're going to take a break. We'll talk more in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And joining us is Dr. Glynn Tonser, a K-State Livestock Economist, and we caught up with him at the Risk Profit Conference. Let's talk about folks eating out and that beyond the retail, but the service area. Is this kind of the new normal, if you will, for right now? It seems like that's one that's very slow to recover from COVID.
Yeah. So in recent months, I think last 6 or 8 months, again, you and I are talking here in August of 24. We've seen several points of evidence to where foot traffic at restaurants has declined, and I think that's a macroeconomic response. The majority of the public tells us in the Meat Demand Monitor large survey project we're talking about here is either their finances have stayed the same or deteriorated compared to a year ago. What I think they're telling me there is buying power isn't keeping up with the cost of living on balance. And the folks that tell us that, which is 80% same or worse finances, is the biggest change they're making is away from home expenditures on food. So at home food expenditures, retail channel is fairly robust. Obviously we got to eat, but people are choosing to do it at home and less away from home. How long that'll persist is a little hard to project, but I do think that bounce back after COVID has been muted by some other non-pandemic macroeconomic pressures.
Okay. Speaking of that, not to get into politics, but we're in the heat of a presidential election. A lot of folks on both sides are doing a lot of saber rattling, and as we speak, there's been both candidates are really focused on the price of food, so really going after pocketbook issues. Talk about food. One of the biggest things is that center of the plate, that protein.
Yes, so I talked about that in various ways. Food prices have went up more than a lot of other parts of our economy, so I clarified that. Exactly why that has happened is a deeper nuanced response, right? I'm not in the camp that there's something nefarious going on there. I tried to clarify in my remarks is the cost of doing almost anything in this country is quite a bit higher than it was before. Simple example I shared was the cost to raise a cow for a year is $200 more than it was 10 years ago. And that's notable. So the break-even cost on selling a calf, which has subsequent implications on the break-even cost of producing hamburger and steak for this country, is quite a bit higher than it was. I fully recognize the political interest in food prices, but I encourage everybody to calm down a little bit and try to understand why they're higher. And the cost of doing almost everything, including our own personal businesses, is quite a bit higher than it was before. That's how inflation works.
Before I let you go, one of the questions that got brought up in your presentation was beef bulls being bred in dairy to have this calf that is different than just the old dairy, and feeding these out. That brings a different animal, and one of the things you brought up was this is maybe more service industry oriented because it almost goes the way of, say, of some of our other proteins that have that consistent product.
Yeah, so a half Holstein, half Angus kind of split is what you're alluding to, is the most common there. There's trade-offs in that. Of course, economists think there's trade-offs in everything, but Holsteins are known to be very predictable when it comes to in the feed yard performance. And with that, to your point, is the muscle cuts tend to be more predictable than a regular beef or full Angus kind of product. And that does change, I think, where those products go. Something I interjected in my remarks earlier is I think the genetic selection, like at the dairy, at the time of breeding or the time of AI straw selection, the industry has that pretty well down. That's the first part of this adoption curve. But as you move from there towards the center of the plate you're alluding to, I think we're still there's more uncertainty there because it's the subsequent, like how do we feed them in the feed yard is something we figure out after we figured out how to breed them. We figure out how to run them in the feed yard, then we figure out how to process them and which market channel send them to and so forth. So I think that part of it is a little maturing later, but there's definitely an elevated role for those products in food service.
Okay, very good. You can find out a lot of things that Dr. Tonser does, agmanager.info, a lot of good information, a lot of tools to help you on the farm and ranch. So Dr. Glynn Tonser, K-State Livestock Economist, has joined us. We'll take a break, have more coming up in just a moment.
Premier Farm & Home has what you need to make your lawn the best in the neighborhood.
Hi, I'm Ken. We choose Premier Farm & Home for the professional look that we do ourselves.
Feel free to stop in. You can also visit our website at heycow.com.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide. and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
Hi everyone, I'm Maddie Meyer, Director of Communications and Outreach at Kansas Grain Sorghum.
Hi, I'm Rodrigo Nofrim, the row crop specialist here at Kansas State University.
And we're here to talk to you a little bit about a new series called Sorghum Connection. And this program is brought to you by the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission, K-State Research and Extension, and the K-State Department of Plant Pathology. And this program will bring forth a series of field trials in schools all about preventing stalk rot diseases in sorghum. Rodrigo, why don't you talk a little bit more about what you're focusing on with these trials?
Yeah, absolutely. So stalk rots is one of the silent yield robbers that we have here in Kansas. We estimate about 5% every year. But depending on the field, we can see yield loss of up to 50%, right? Some of the things that we've been tackling now, it's cropping system, fungicides, and as well variety selection, right, that we're looking into right now.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And a really unique aspect about the Sorghum Connection series is that it's put on by farmers for farmers. And so this means that farmers will be deciding the topics and the speakers that will be presenting at these events.
And very exciting too, because in the winter we'll be hosting another series from December 4th to the 6th of winter schools, again, for farmers, from farmers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And be sure to join us for the Sorghum Connection Field Days on September 4th in Bavaria, Kansas, September 11th in Dighton, Kansas, and September 18th in Russell, Kansas. And for more information, you can visit www.ksgrainsorghum.org.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
In today's world, consumers increasingly invest in their food being sustainably grown and want more transparency in knowing where their food comes from. In response, soybean farmers, who play a crucial role in our food supply chain, embrace innovative and regenerative farming practices to improve their soybean production. Their proactive approach and investment in technological research create a more sustainable and functional crop, demonstrating their value and integral role in the process. Different types of agricultural technology, specifically biotechnology, play a part in innovative soybean farming. Biotechnology in agriculture involves using scientific techniques to modify living organisms, such as plants and animals, to enhance their traits or create new varieties. These advancements have revolutionized farming practices, increasing productivity, sustainability, and economic benefits. For instance, genetically modified soybeans have been developed to resist herbicides, allowing farmers to effectively manage weeds without harming their crops. This technology reduces the need for chemical herbicides and promotes more efficient farming practices. Moreover, biotechnology has enhanced the nutritional content of soybeans, making them more beneficial for both livestock feed and human consumption. This innovation contributes to healthier diets and sustainable agricultural practices. Now, why is this particularly beneficial for soybean farmers in Kansas? Kansas is a major producer of soybeans, and adopting biotechnology has increased yields and reduced production costs. Farmers can grow more soybeans on less land using fewer resources, ultimately improving their profitability and sustainability. This positive impact of biotechnology on soybean farming in Kansas is a reason for optimism and hope for the future. Biotechnology empowers soybean farmers in Kansas by providing innovative solutions, improving crop quality, and ensuring sustainable agriculture. By harnessing the power of science, we enhance crop productivity and contribute to a more resilient agricultural sector for the future. For more information on how biotechnology is being applied to soybean farming, visit kansassoybean.org/research.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and LibertyLink that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
September is just around the corner, and that means it's time for the Kansas State Fair. The State Fair is one of the best parts of the year for the Kansas Department of Agriculture, as many of our staff will assist in a variety of areas ranging from animal health and food safety to agriculture education and advocacy. Our trademark program, From the Land of Kansas, will have a booth in the Pride of Kansas building all week, which will feature member companies offering tasting opportunities and selling their products. KDA will be represented at the AgriLand booth, also in the Pride of Kansas building, where children can enjoy a hands-on experience, learning how Kansas crops and livestock provide us with food and other items we use every day. On the first Saturday of the fair, KDA will be hosting the Kansas Grape Stomp event at 1 o'clock at Gottschalk Park. This event is a fun opportunity to learn about the grape and wine industry in Kansas and see who will be crowned the Grape Stomp Champion of 2024. Meanwhile, KDA's Division of Animal Health staff oversees biosecurity services for the thousands of livestock exhibitors bringing animals to show in the competition. You'll see us in the barns throughout the fair as we help ensure the safety of all animals and exhibitors. And our food safety and lodging program personnel will be present to inspect the food vendors and to provide education and assistance, ensuring that food preparation areas are clean, food is prepared and stored safely, and that food workers are following proper food handling guidelines. The Kansas Department of Agriculture encourages all Kansans to head to the fair to enjoy all of the exhibits, food, entertainment, competitions, and educational displays. The Kansas State Fair, September 6th through 15th, is a wonderful showcase of Kansas agriculture, industry, and culture, as well as an educational and entertaining experience that is the pride of all Kansans. To find out more, go to kansasstatefair.com.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
U.S. Senators Roger Marshall of Kansas and Michael Bennet from Colorado recently sent a letter urging U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack to modify USDA's drought mitigation programs to provide more sufficient resources for farmers and ranchers. The letter detailed testimony and recommendations given by Kansas and Colorado producers, water experts, and state officials during the June field hearing in Burlington, Colorado. The hearing focused on solving the unique challenges historic drought is creating for Western producers. According to Senator Marshall, through the field hearing and testimonies provided, they heard the problems and complications loud and clear. He said now it's time to focus on solutions. Senator Marshall said he hopes USDA will take the next steps and make improvements and investments to help Kansas and Colorado ranchers. Senator Marshall and Senator Bennet do recognize that these efforts will not solve all the water issues in the West, but note it's a good start. The letter specifically addressed multiple USDA programs that could be improved, including the Conservation Reserve Program, Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and Watershed and Flood Prevention Program. The letter also recommended increased investment in research and innovative approaches to water conservation, like the creation of a voluntary groundwater conservation pilot program mirrored after Bennett's Voluntary Groundwater Conservation Act.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
Good morning. This is Jacob Herzog with Pinion Risk Management. Many are watching the Pro Farmer Crop Tour and waiting for bullish news. The Pro Farmer Tour is estimating South Dakota average yield at 156.51 versus the USDA's current forecast of 162. The tour is estimating Ohio's corn yield at 183.29 versus the USDA's current 188. Now in Indiana, corn coming in at 187.54 versus the USDA's current forecast of 207. Nebraska was estimated at 173.25 versus the USDA's 194. Illinois is estimated at 204.14 versus the USDA's whopping 225. Now, Northwest Iowa coming in at 176.59, Central West at 195.86, and Southwest at 191.59. Now, you know, the guys in the crop tour do a really great job, but obviously cannot cover the entire state when they roll through. It's a good initial look at something, but not necessarily something a guy should base his marketing on. Now, you know, market participants put massive amounts of money on the line to predict the price, and they really do not do it lightly. There's still basis opportunities in the West, while basis in the East's river complex specifically have been collapsing under increased freight rates due to a low Mississippi River, old crops still coming to market, and a massive new crop coming online. I know at this point in the marketing year, it can feel like, well, I did what I did, and now it's all going into storage. And if that storage is commercial, I'd look to alternatives to physical ownership versus the cost of commercial storage and interest, especially since it appears that we're going into a high supply environment year nationwide. Now, if you would like to talk to anybody about a plan, you can reach us at 888-452-8751. I'm Jacob Herzog with Pinion Risk Management.
That'll do it for our program this week. Be social with us online, kansasagreport.net, or our social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. Again, stay with us over the next several weeks. We'll have lots of interviews from K-State's Risk Profit Conference that took place recently on the campus of Kansas State University. I'm Ken Rogers. We'll see you next week on the Kansas Ag Report.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn. For livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.